In the quiet suburb of Maple Hollow, Saturday mornings were usually filled with the distant hum of lawnmowers, the occasional bark of a restless dog, and the clink of coffee mugs on front porches. For over 15 years, Jonathan Hayes had called this neighborhood home. A retired aerospace engineer with a methodical mind and a deep respect for structure, he and his wife, Elaine, had meticulously followed every rule laid out by the Homeowners Association. Beige mailbox? Check. Lawn trimmed to precisely 2 inches? Always. Approved seasonal flowers lining the walkway? Without fail. Jonathan wasn't one for drama, and neither was Elaine. They'd chosen Maple Hollow for its order, its predictability. But predictability has a way of masking rot, and beneath the neighborhood's manicured facade lay something festering, something that would soon rise to the surface with explosive consequences. It began with the return of their daughter, Natalie. At 36, Natalie was a highly decorated special operations trainer who'd spent the last decade instructing elite military units. She was lean, sharp-eyed, and walked with a quiet authority that never needed to announce itself. That Saturday, she arrived in her rugged olive Jeep dusted with the mud of 3 counties after a grueling 72-hour field simulation and a 3-hour drive. Her eyes were bloodshot, her posture heavy with fatigue, but she was home, finally. "Dad, can you grab these boxes?" she called, lifting gear from the Jeep's trunk. She had brought with her not just supplies, but a high-end security system she insisted on installing after hearing about recent break-ins in nearby neighborhoods. Jonathan nodded, adjusting his glasses as he reached for one of the heavier crates. She parked the Jeep in a clearly labeled visitor's spot just outside the house. Technically, HOA rules allowed only 30 minutes for visitor parking, but with everything going on, hauling boxes, setting up equipment, and helping her aging parents, it hardly seemed pressing. Midway through the unloading, Natalie's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and her entire demeanor shifted. "It's one of my trainees," she said softly, stepping inside. "He's having a PTSD episode, bad one." She sank into the couch, her voice steady as she guided the young soldier through breathing techniques, staying on the line while coordinating with his base's emergency intervention team. For 25 minutes, Jonathan and Elaine watched in quiet admiration as their daughter spoke calm into chaos. By the time she hung up, Natalie's face was pale. She rubbed her temples, eyes unfocused. "He's going to be okay," she whispered. "But God, these mental battles are relentless." Elaine handed her a bottle of water and some aspirin. Natalie smiled weakly. None of them had thought about the Jeep still out front. Then came the knock. Not pounding. It rattled the door frame, hard and angry. Jonathan frowned and went to answer, heart skipping slightly. On the other side stood Malcolm Trent, Maple Hollow's self-appointed security chief for the HOA. A man with a belly full of delusion and a resume that included getting fired from mall security for excessive force. Malcolm wore a knockoff uniform complete with mirrored sunglasses and a stitched-on HOA enforcement badge. "That Jeep's been parked for 43 minutes, he barked, slapping a clipboard against the door. "Violation notice. $300 tow fee. $500 fine." Before Jonathan could respond, Natalie stepped into view. She was still in civilian clothes, but her military posture snapped into place as though a switch had been flipped. Her voice was respectful but firm. "Sir, I understand the policy. I just got back from a long training session, drove 3 hours, and had to handle an emergency call. I'll move it in 15 minutes. Malcolm's lips curled. He lived for this: the power, the control, the petty dominance. "Rules are rules," he snapped. "You think you're above them because you wear boots and bark orders?" Natalie's tone softened, but her eyes remained sharp. "No, sir. I'm asking for a brief accommodation. That's all." Malcolm pulled out his phone and began recording, shoving it in her face. "Documenting your refusal. People like you think you're special. You're not." Jonathan stepped forward, but Natalie gently held him back. "Let me," she murmured. She turned to go inside, but Malcolm reached out and grabbed her arm. "Hart, you don't walk away from me." That's when it happened. A flash of motion. Natalie's training activated like muscle memory. She twisted out of his grip, disarmed his grab, and sent him stumbling backwards into Elaine's rose bushes. His sunglasses flew off, revealing wild, panicked eyes. "You assaulted an officer," he screamed, struggling to untangle himself from the thorns. "I was defending myself," Natalie said calmly, glancing at the neighbors now peering out from behind blinds and porch railings. Malcolm stormed off, dropping his clipboard and citations as he went. Jonathan picked up the papers, brows furrowed. "He's going to escalate this," he said quietly. They didn't expect him to return with a loaded gun. 20 minutes later, car doors slammed. Malcolm approached the house flanked by two other HOA volunteers. One was Paul Mercer, a timid retiree who had once had his car towed by Malcolm for parking 1 inch over the curb. The other was Dr. Elena Cruz, a new resident and therapist who looked visibly uneasy, likely fed a story about dangerous trespassers. Natalie stepped onto the porch, her stance calm, centered. She positioned herself between the house and the trio. Malcolm pointed directly at her. "Security enforcement. Step outside." Dr. Cruz raised an eyebrow. "You didn't mention guns," she said nervously. That's when Malcolm pulled out a black Glock and aimed it squarely at Natalie's head. On the ground, he roared, "You're under arrest for assault." Gasps echoed across the street. Phones came out. Cameras rolled. Natalie didn't move. She quickly assessed her surroundings: distance, angle, witnesses, cover points. Her voice was clear and commanding. "You are committing a felony, Mr. Trent. Lower the weapon. I am the law here." Malcolm bellowed. "You don't want to go to prison over a parking space," she said, slowly inching forward. Malcolm's grip tightened. Then she moved. A swift step forward, a wrist strike, a pivot. The gun clattered to the lawn. Malcolm went down hard, face in the grass, Natalie kneeling beside him with the weapon cleared and safely pointed away. "Call 911, she instructed calmly. "Armed assault. Weapon secured." By the time Officer Luis Martinez arrived, Natalie was standing with the unloaded weapon at her side, calmly recounting every detail. She explained her credentials, her training, her actions. Martinez nodded, impressed. But hours later, everything changed. Helen Rusk, president of the HOA and a local real estate mogul, stormed into the station with Police Chief Bowman, her husband's golfing buddy. Without reading the reports, Bowman ordered Malcolm uncuffed and declared the situation a misunderstanding. The weapon was returned. No charges filed. That night, the Hayes family received notice of an emergency HOA meeting to vote on their eviction. The reason? Natalie was deemed a danger to community safety. Natalie didn't flinch. She called David Lynn, an old friend and attorney who specialized in HOA overreach cases. "This isn't about parking," she told him. "It's about power." Over the next few days, David, Natalie, and Elaine began digging. What they uncovered was staggering. Malcolm had a sealed assault record expunged by Bowman. Dozens of residents had been harassed into selling their homes at below-market value homes later purchased by companies tied to Helen's network. Violation notices began flooding the Hayes' mailbox fines for uncut grass, unauthorized surveillance equipment, creating public disturbances. The water was shut off. The front garden was vandalized, then cited for being unsightly. Through it all, Natalie installed cameras, recorded everything. She and David recruited Maria Gomez, the HOA's former treasurer, who had resigned quietly the year before. With her help, they traced over $600,000 of HOA funds funneled into Malcolm's salary, Helen's dummy corporations, and Bowman's campaign fund. Retired Judge Henry Blake, a quiet resident who had watched the HOA's tyranny for years, compiled 2 decades of complaints. Each told a story: families forced out, ramps for disabled residents removed, community gardens bulldozed. It all led back to Helen. Then came the defamation lawsuit. Helen sued Natalie for $500,000, claiming slander. Natalie smiled. "They think I'm on the defense. Let's give them a surprise." The next HOA meeting was mandatory. Non-attendance carried a $1,000 fine. Helen took the podium, smug and confident. She painted Natalie as an unstable veteran, dangerous to children. She motioned for a vote on their eviction. Natalie, in a crisp blazer, calmly raised her hand. "Under Section 8C of the HOA Charter, I request a floor presentation." Judge Blake backed her. "She has the right." Natalie took the stage. What followed was a takedown unlike any Maple Hollow had ever seen. Spreadsheets, video footage, email threads, testimonies, fraud, extortion, abuse of power. As Helen shouted to have her silenced, the doors burst open. FBI agent Kimberly Harper and State Attorney Chief Daniels entered, badges raised. "This meeting is suspended," Harper declared. "We are serving arrest warrants." Helen was taken into custody. Malcolm too. Bowman was indicted days later. Investigation spread statewide. Maple Hollow elected attorney Sarah Kim as the new HOA president. Fees were slashed. Rules rewritten. Transparency became the law of the land. Natalie founded Homeward, a nonprofit to protect residents against HOA abuse. Within a year, it operated in 30 communities across the state. The following spring, on the anniversary of the incident, the community center hosted a celebration. The new welcome sign read, "Maple Hollow Stronger Together." Natalie, standing at the podium, looked out at a sea of neighbors. "It wasn't the Jeep," she said. "It was the silence. And we broke it." One voice, then another, until truth made the ground shake. The crowd roared. An overstayed parking ticket had started it all. But what came next was a revolution.